Okay, we are live. Testing test. Hopefully the mic works. Should work. I had some technical problems recently, so let me know if you hear me or not. Glasses should be good. Watch me clean my glasses. Wait until some people get in here. We're here every Thursday from 11:30 to about 2 California time, in case you are tuning into the replay or you want to attend a future stream. So let's bring up some comments here till we get some people. Studio. I just published a new video, which you can go watch, about the lazy ass sound. Let me actually go ahead and grab this video here, post it. This is the newest video. Yeah. Just human plus. Welcome. I don't know what the plus is. I guess it's positive. Welcome. Okay. Let's go to comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's see here. Recent comments. One held for review. Oh, I see. Okay, that's actually a good question. Go ahead and improve that. So I just caught this question, and I'll reply to it a little later. But this person asks, after watching this video, they're commenting on the extra practice for the voiceless TH dental T version. If you don't know about that, I have a lesson you can watch about the dental T and dental D version of the TH sounds in American English. Very important lesson. But this person comments that they say, I also watch many videos of native speakers speaking the TH sound, but they don't use the pure TH version or the dental T or D version 100%. They always change between them, and I'm very confused when to use two different versions. Please help me. Now, the answer to this is that, generally speaking, it does not matter. They are just variations. There's no, generally speaking, there's no time to use the dental one and the full one. I have a video about the full range of the TH sounds. I'll go ahead and paste this here. So let's go content. So you can check out this video, which it would be nice if I had an assistant to help do these things for me in the background. David, maybe. I saw your comment there, David. I'll get to you in 1 second. I want to post, let's see here, TH. Do the dental TD variation, TH sounds. There it is, the full range of the TH. So we'll get the link here. Go back over to this comment. Over here, post this video, bam. That will tell you everything you need to know about the TH sounds and the full range of how to produce the TH sounds. David, your voice is exceptionally deep today. How are you? Is it really? Well, I guess I should speak like this all the time. I don't know. I guess I don't know why that is. That's weird. Although I did just remember, where did my thing go? Kind of important. Oh well, I'll have to do that later. I am good, David. I hope you are good as well. Did you message me back yet? No, I sent you a reply message, an email. I don't know if you've gotten that yet. So just let me know what you think about that message in the email later. And Andri, I don't know how to say this. Andri, I guess. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Welcome. Lazy versus how to learn for someone if both are missing in my native language, Ukrainian. Okay, so interesting point. Let me see here. I was looking at Ukrainian recently for a student, Ukrainian bell chart. And yes, Ukrainian has neither a nor a. And the thing about Ukrainian specifically, since I'm working with someone who speaks Ukrainian, I'm going to be talking a lot in the near future about mouth posture and how that is like the secret key to really mastering pronunciation and making a lot of the sounds relatively easier. But working with this student that I'm working with right now, it seems to me that the Ukrainian mouth posture is definitely different. In fact, according to the IPA and the vowel chart for the Ukrainian, you have the sound I, like an it, but in Ukrainian, it doesn't really even sound like I. It sounds sort of like the same sound, but compared to English, it's not the English version of the sound, which is another reason why I say don't trust the IPA. But aside from that, to answer your question, the first thing is you want to go to ah first, not the lazy ah. If you already can hear the difference and produce the difference, maybe between the full ah and the not the lazy there's no lazy the ah and it's the first place to start, because you want to be able to do the fully enunciated version of the sound. And if you can't do that, you need to get that first. At least it doesn't have to be perfect necessarily, but you at least want to get it to where it's pretty close. The lazy ah is a bit easier to do. And since we usually use the lazy ah more often than not, if your full ah is close, but then your lazy ah sounds perfectly fine, then it's okay. You can kind of just get away with it. But then if you need to enunciate or emphasize, your ah is probably not going to be lazy and it's going to sound a little weird. So it depends on how perfect you want to sound, how native-like you want to sound. But anytime you have sounds that are missing in your native language, you have to go and learn those sounds, right? That's the first place to start. Ear training is always first. I have a lesson, I believe, between a and for minimal pairs. Versus minimal pairs versus So get shareable link. I'm just posting videos left and right today. Bam. Okay, that's versus the full ah. And I think in that one I did a mixed speed, because for the first four front vowels, e, I, just like in direct comparison with each other, like versus ah, I was doing like a slow version and a fast version. And then for the other minimal pairs, I did sort of a mixed, where sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's faster. When we do the faster ah, it naturally tends to become the lazy ah. So you'll kind of get a little bit of the lazy ah in that minimal pair lesson. But first, you want to be able to hear the difference between the two. If you can hear the difference between the two, then you want to make sure that you can produce the difference between the two. So you have to find the ah, and you have to find the And again, I'm going to be talking about mouth posture, which is going to make that a lot easier overall, relatively. And there are techniques for that. I need to make more technique videos for the course here. But the biggest thing that you're going to want to use is something called micro adjustments. Which is something that Idausa Ness also talks about. Idahosa Ness. Looks like Idahosa, but it's Idausa. It's really funny because him and I came to a lot of the similar conclusions and even similar terminology, like independently. And after I found him, I was like, oh, he uses the same words that I do. But micro adjustments is where you make just tiny little changes, like, trying to shift the tension, or, maybe just it may have to open your mouth a little bit more. You might have to push your tongue forward a little bit more, whatever it is for that particular sound. You play with it. And ideally you want feedback from a native. They don't have to be a teacher. They could just be any native speaker that tells you if you sound good or not. And tell them to be very strict. Don't just say oh yeah, that's good. No, you want it to be as accurate as possible. You can do it by yourself to an extent, but especially if you haven't fully trained your ears yet, you can't quite trust your ears. But recording yourself actually helps you hear better, because when you're saying it yourself, your brain is using a certain amount of resources to try to like produce the sound. And then if you actually record yourself and listen, you actually have more resources and you're like, oh, that didn't sound as good as I thought it sounded. So it's a weird, interesting little thing that happens. He has the mimic method. Yes. Big fan of Idausa. I haven't taken any of his courses or anything, just because I don't feel I need to for myself. But I've seen some of his materials and stuff. I think generally it's very good stuff. He's really big on the IPA. I'm not so much big on the IPA. That's one of our biggest differences, I think. But he thinks that you should start from pronunciation and focus on like your ears. Like reading, writing comes later. I completely agree with that. There's no one right way, but me personally, I think pronunciation and ear training unlocks the whole language for you. So anyway, point is you use micro adjustments, you use these little things, you get feedback in some way, you continue the process. It's just repeat. It's very scientific. You just make a little change. Did it sound better? Did it sound worse? Okay. Make a different change. Did it sound better? Did it sound worse? And you just keep doing that. And some tongue awareness exercises, like just trying to like move the tension along your tongue and starting to become more aware of how your tongue feels, both in your native language and for what you're trying to do in English, is going to be very, very useful, because the more that you can feel your tongue and the more subtle awareness you have, the more you can make little tiny changes here and there to get closer and closer to the sound. Again, I'm going to have more lessons about that later. But that's basically it. So you do that for the full you do that for make sure you can hear the difference between them. And then for the lazy as I said in that lesson, it's a where you're basically doing but there's a little tiny tweak where you're using like the basic shape of from the position of and it comes out as instead, because the thing that I think most teachers probably don't tell you guys, right? They focus, okay, yeah, there's a different height in the mouth, right? This one's higher, this one's lower, that's true. But in reality, the height is one of the least important details. Now, American English overall is a bit more open, and that's something I'm going to be talking about with mouth posture. It's not necessarily more relaxed, but it is more open, and more on that later. But you don't have to like you don't have to open your mouth that much to do an sound, right? It's not a requirement to produce the sound physically. It just makes it sound maybe a little clearer, a little more emphasized in a way. But if I do it sounds perfectly fine. It's the exact quality of the sound is a little bit different, obviously, because my mouth isn't as open, but a native speaker's ears, it's like it's within the full range of the sound. And our ears will just interpret it as an if you do it right. So it's perfectly natural, perfectly normal. One thing I actually forgot to put in that lesson, I know I was forgetting something. If you go to and if you have correct, right, make sure your is good. But if you have a nice good and the tip of your tongue doesn't have to be inside the teeth here, the bottom teeth. But that's when I do the tip of my tongue naturally kind of goes down in here. Not like way down here, but just right inside. If you sort of just keep that basic posture more or less, and you just kind of slide this down, there might be a little subtle tension here and there that might also shift a little bit, but basically if you just kind of slide down here a little bit without opening your mouth too much more, it'll sort of slide into that lazy sound. So anyway, good. So that's all I have to say for that. I want to spend the whole time on this. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. That's fine, but that would be my advice for that. Just human. What does Allstate track mean? That sounds like Allstate track. That sounds like some sports thing, like track competition, right? Like where your track would be like running. Track and field is the area of sports in like high school and college where you're running or you're jumping over the barriers and stuff like that. So Allstate, I would assume in this context would be for like the whole state. So if it's like California state, like you're competing at the state level instead of just like a local level. I'm not 100% sure because I don't care much about sports, but it sounds like that's what it should be. If the context is completely different, let me know more information and we can look into that. But David, I'll get back to you ASAP. Wait, didn't you say something? Oh yeah, that's right. We already covered that. I'll get back to you ASAP, by the way, in light of the recent half A. Yeah, you can call it the half A also. That works too. I like lazy. How do you feel about the E plus A reduction of A before N? Well, I talked about that in the what was it? The truth about A before N and M. So that's another video I could post. It's probably gonna get lost in the chat at this point. But if you look up like English hacks the truth A, like AH, it'll probably pop up. And I addressed that in that video. But as I've said before, it is something that happens. It's a possibility. But I think it's just a really, really lazy, like super lazy way to say A before N and M. It's not required. It's not the way to say it. It's just something that can happen. Do you still acknowledge that as an alternative option in fast speech, or have you dismissed that? Now you think it's just lazy A plus tiny sound due to articulation? Yeah. Okay. So following up from that, my stance is it can happen. It's not required. It can happen. As I said, there can be a tiny little that I don't think is even required necessarily. But one thing that I've noticed, because it was like maybe a month or two ago, one of you, actually might have been David, had a question about a video where I guess it was, what was it? What was her name? It was something Jenner. Kendall, that's right, Kendall Jenner. And the way that she said it, whoever was that asked about it had to question, because at the start of the video, it was like, "Hi, I'm Kendall Jenner." It was like, she said her name, and then it was cut to somebody saying like, "Candle, your name is Candle," but she wasn't saying candle. I think, especially in Western American English, what some Western Americans do, and it's not something that we always do. It's not something that you have to do. It's just something that can happen. The I and the E can actually be lowered a little bit compared to like the other neutral dialects, because Western American is also a neutral dialect. And it can come out that way. So the E can be a little lower. It's still an S sound, but it's a little lower than usual. And then we know we have the lazy A, which is like A higher, in a higher position. And so we have sort of this lazy E, which is a little lower in Western America, and that can happen, not that it has to happen. And then the lazy A, which tends to be higher. And so we have this sort of like section in here where, for somebody who is maybe from another part of the country who also speaks, another neutral sounding general American dialect, they may not be able to actually hear the subtle differences between this lowered E and the lazy A. And I think that's one reason why a lot of teachers will tell you that A before N and M is actually E plus A. Where when I listen to it, sometimes, yes, I'll be like, okay, yeah, they did do E and A there. But sometimes I'll see people say like, see, this is E plus A, and they'll even say it themselves. And I'm like, no, there's an A there. That's a lazy A. It's a subtle little difference in the shape. So this causes confusion, I think, even for natives. But again, just because, if you learn the Western American neutral dialect, because remember, there's not just one neutral dialect in American English. I have a lesson about that. Sometimes Western Americans will drop the E a little lower. You don't have to do that, but it can cause some issues. So it's a big mess here, especially before N and M. Things get a little weird and messy. It's real speech. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You don't have to care about it. Just, follow the guidelines. So Theris, hello, welcome. Happy Eve, Christmas. It'll be Christmas Eve And actually, I suppose I guess you're in tomorrow. It's still the 23rd here. So I guess, wait, hold on. So there's Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, which is the night before. There's Christmas Eve Day, which is the day before Christmas. So this, where I am, would actually be Christmas Eve Day Eve, which we don't usually say, but it's actually 2 days before Christmas here. So either way, regardless, happy Christmas Eve, yes, and happy Christmas. Which, by the way, in American English, we do not say happy Christmas. We say Merry Christmas. British English, and perhaps other Englishes like Australian, I don't know, but I know British English says happy Christmas. Why do they say happy? They say happy Christmas, happy New Year. We say Merry Christmas, happy New Year. Why? Because that's what we say. Okay, that's American English. If you tell an American happy Christmas, they're going to look at you funny. Okay, beforehand, when you say happy birthday, happy Christmas, but before it happens, how to express that? Well, I think that's kind of what I was talking about before with like Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve Day is like a special thing that we have. If it's birthday, we would say like happy early birthday. So if it's like a day, 2, 3 days, a week, whatever, like you're not going to see the person. So you say, here's your present because I'm going to be out of town on your birthday. Happy early birthday. So we say early there. But Christmas is different. We have Christmas Eve Day. So anyway, and in general, for Christmas, like let's say it's the 20th, right? So it's like Christmas is coming. We don't say like Merry Early Christmas. We just say Merry Christmas. And it doesn't matter if it's not the day for Christmas. We just say Merry Christmas. It's fine. It's not a big deal because it's around the time, right? So it's the holiday season. So learn English with El Chavo intro. What? Okay, so remember, Wendell, I do not get links, so I guess I'll have to look for this. I'll look it up and see what I find. In that link, this is a video. They usually use the word professor as a title to address the teacher. Is it because of the influence of the Spanish language? Probably. I know that at the college level in Spanish, you say profesor. At the high school and lower level, I don't know. That's a little piece of information that I haven't been exposed to, but let me see. Yeah, El Chavo, such a classic Spanish TV show. I didn't know they have a cartoon. English opening, copia del Chavo animado, intro en inglés. Yeah, I'm not seeing. I guess maybe it'll be this one. Let's see. This is in English. I don't want the English one. Okay, intro español. Let's see. Español. Just give me the English one. I don't want the English one. Yeah, all of these are in English. I don't know why it's not giving me the Spanish intro. Or wait, hold on. It actually might be. What am I doing? Yeah, learning intro. Yeah, obviously we're talking about English. Okay, so I'm gonna listen to that. I got confused there. Duh, I'm stupid. Sorry. Come on. I don't know where this is. I'm trying to skip ahead, but I guess maybe I'm missing it. Junior, Kiko, Patty, Phoebe, Raymond, Mr. Oh, I see. So I see it's. I don't hear them saying it, but when they show that character, it says Professor Girafalde. That if he's not a college teacher, which I assume since El Chavo is, a kid, he's probably not a college teacher. I would imagine that's because of the Spanish, yeah. Because that would be the character's name in Spanish, like Professor, what was it, Girafalde or something like that. They wouldn't, and also they probably kept it as Professor or Professor because it doesn't translate well in English. If you change the character's name and you say teacher Girafalde, it doesn't matter that his name is in Spanish, that's fine, but we wouldn't say that in English. We wouldn't say like, oh, teacher Moore as like a character. No, it doesn't work in English. We don't do that because we don't use teacher as like a title with the name. We don't say teacher whoever. The way that would convert into English would be if instead of saying Professor Girafalde, if they said Mr. Girafalde. But then we don't know from the context of that little intro that he's a teacher. And so maybe they just kept it as Professor because that's what it is. Maybe in the English version, maybe they call him Professor Girafalde. And I would say that's probably left over from Spanish, but we would not say that, at least not in any English I'm familiar with. It would be very strange. We would just say Mr. So, okay. Anyway, A, welcome. How many non-native speakers with almost perfect pronunciation do you know? Personally, I mean, limited. Non-native speakers, and are you talking about all languages or just like non-native speakers learning English? There's several polyglots, whether in English or in other languages, that sound perfect or almost perfect. Luca Lampariello is really good at that. Idao Senes is really good at that. I think Benny Lewis, I don't know exactly how perfect he is in all of his languages, but I know, I'm pretty sure in Spanish, he sounds really, really good. Because I don't think he's as big on pronunciation as like Idausa or Luca, but he does see pronunciation as important. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. In my real personal life, like probably nobody. I guess because I don't personally in my like personal circle of people that I know, I don't know a whole lot of non-native speakers of English. So yeah. By the way, regarding the voice comment, it's as if the live audio is pitched down a notch. Might be a glitch on my end. It's no big deal. You can understand you. But okay, good. You sound like you have a sore throat. That might be the audio. Might be a little bit me. I don't think it's me. It's probably the audio. I need to replace this mic. It's not like this one here. It's not the best mic. And I'm hopefully going to be able to do that by the end of the month. But yeah, because I noticed I've been using this mic to record my videos. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a little bit of like, the audio isn't the best. Like it's good, but there's a little bit of like, and I'm not sure how to tune it. I tried to tune it to make it sound better for the video, and I couldn't do that because I'm not an audio expert. So I think it's the mic. Did you buy a new PC? Wow, your voice is way different. Yeah, again, I think it's the mic. This is not a new PC. I bought this several months ago. It's just you haven't seen it because it's been on the floor. I recently moved my room around again, so I put the computer up here. Should have been working on some crazy placement hacks, hence the new voice. Can't wait to get that. I love baritone. Yeah. No, that wouldn't affect my English. I'm not trying to change my English placement. Have been doing a lot of work with a couple of students on. I'm not even calling it placement anymore. I don't think placement. Number one, I don't think placement is the best term. I mean, it's okay. But number two, I don't want it to be confused with what other teachers are talking about, because a lot of this placement stuff I think is garbage. Not that it's not completely wrong or anything or completely right. It's just, anyway, you'll see more of what I'm talking about later, but all this like speaking from the chest and all this, like, I think a lot of that is nonsense. And I'm going to have a big fix for you guys on what's really going on. and how to actually, I'm using the term mouth posture, which is a term that I found from Accent Help and a couple other sources. And I think it's the perfect term. It's primarily tongue-based. It also involves your jaw. It does involve a bit of your throat, but it's primarily tongue-based. And the way that you hold your tongue through your speech will subtly affect your throat, and it will it won't affect the jaw. The jaw is not completely independent, but like American English, the jaw is a little more open compared to say Russian or Spanish. And if you try to hit the sounds, you'll still probably get the sounds really well. But if you don't open your jaw enough to get enough space in the mouth, it's still going to sound a little off. Which is something that I realized recently. So, and when a lot of these teachers are talking about like you need to relax, no. Relatively speaking, if your language's mouth posture is a little higher, and especially if it's tilted a little, like it's pushed a little forward, then relatively speaking, American English might be relatively a little more relaxed, but it's not relaxed. Because if it were completely relaxed, then you'd have to be talking like this all the time. it wouldn't work. So I'm coming up with what I think is a much better way to teach these concepts and to where it actually makes sense. Anyway, that's all coming up in the near future. I'm trying to do a little bit more work with experimenting with some students, experimenting with myself in Spanish, and trying to develop like some basic techniques around this before I like throw a video at you guys, because I want it like I've gathered enough evidence where I think my theory is definitely like on point, it's accurate. But if there's no techniques on like how to actually adjust your mouth posture and how to use it, then it kind of doesn't matter. It's just theory. So I want to get some sort of basis going that I can actually give you guys that's useful, instead of just like, hey, here's this idea. So it's coming. I'm making a lot of progress with that in the background. But Wendell, how to pronounce the words English? Oh, okay. I think a bit of a grammar problem here. Do the N and G make just one sound? And Spanish. Okay, so how to pronounce the words English and Spanish. So the is, I guess that's a typo. It shouldn't be there. With A as in pan. Okay. So it's English, which for some very, very strange reason, I don't know if maybe this, since my ears are much more tuned to the subtleties of the differences between the neutral dialects of American English. I don't know if maybe that's why I'm picking up on it, but I've noticed some American English teachers pronouncing the word English with "eh," and I'm just like, why? Why are you? That's not how you say the word. So I don't know. Maybe it's a regional thing, or slight shift from some of the other neutral dialects. But so it's supposed to be E, not E, not E, it's E. English. That E can get kind of lazy, maybe go into I a little bit, but English. So using the back and remember the sound, the NG sound, is not g. There is no g. Okay. Some words, for some reason, like anger, do tend to use a bit more of that g sound, but the sound itself is It's just commonly written with ng. The reason why it's commonly written with ng isn't because there's supposed to be a g there. It's because the physical mechanics of producing that sound, when you release that back position, it tends to, unless you put a k after it, which is voiceless g, it tends to get at least a little bit of a g being released with just the physical release of that position in your tongue. So if you say English, you can say the word without any g. English. That's a perfectly good, nice, clear way to say the word. But what you'll commonly hear is English. And in this particular case, there's two reasons. One, as I said, releasing at least a little bit of a g is acceptable, but you're not supposed to try to push out a g like English. No, like the g is incidental. It kind of just gets released with the sometimes. It can come out. It's fine. But also in this particular case, g and because of the release from here into the you can actually do English and do gl as like a sound cluster, just like KL or like KL, like cling, clack, close, whatever, clutter. You can do the same thing, just make it voiced good. I don't know if you guys hear a lot of background noise, let me know. But glitter, glue, right? G and is a sound cluster. And so because of that, in this particular case, you go into that and then you can go ahead and just push out a full g because it can sort of link to that L as a sound cluster. And now it's like English, not English. So there's a bit of a range on how to pronounce this word just because of the sounds that are involved. But normally the sound is not supposed to have a g with it. It's just, it can happen, like a small g is okay. Spanish, yeah, so Spanish, so we have a before an n, so it's going to sound a little bit weird. We're probably going to use the lazy a. It can become the e plus a if you get really lazy. But it, right, like pan is exactly like pan, and pan, span. You just put an S in front of Spanish. Yeah. It's not Spanish, it's not Spanglish or something in the back. It's just normal and Spanish. Yeah. I don't know if you have a follow-up to that, but it's just a before n or a before n. How to pronounce the P followed by a D, as in it is equipped with the blah blah blah. So a P followed by a D. Okay. Well, number one, we have a little bit of a misunderstanding isn't the best word, but you're not. There's a bit wrong here. So it's not, this particular case is not a P followed by a D. It's a P followed by a T. It's written with a D. Remember, the ED ending, 99% of the time. There are exceptions, but the ED ending, the E is silent, and then that D is going to be pronounced as a D if the sound before it is voiced, like buzzed, or it's going to be pronounced as a T if the sound before it is voiceless, like a P sound. So if it were, I don't know, what's the word that ends in B that I can add an ED to? I don't know, gabbed. Gab, to gab is a verb, but you don't have to care what that means. But gabbed, it'd be B to T, gabbed. Where the P, it would actually turn that what looks, it's written as a D, it actually makes it into a T sound in the pronunciation. So it'd be equipped. So you just do PT. Do not say equipped. That wouldn't be right. Maybe if you're super like over enunciating and really highlighting that word, like it is equipped with, maybe it can come out as a D, but it's supposed to be a T under like normal circumstances most of the time. Even if you're exaggerating, it's still supposed to be a T, but we can play with it a little bit in extreme cases. But the way that you would do that, whether it's a T or a D, the physical placement is the same. It's just the D would be voiced. So if we do P to T, you have the P here. So you can't have the tongue already in the T when you release the P. You have to release that P, and immediately the tongue needs to be right there to go into the T. So you just push out one stop and then the other stop. Not as in a stop sound, but P is a stop. Not like a stopped P, right? It's categorically a stop sound. So you push that out and then you push that out. Okay, equipped. Okie dokie. Hamid, welcome. A quick one, please. How do kids learn tongue and lip positioning? No S there. Tongue and lip positioning and placement without all these instructions. For me, it is difficult to follow the instructions. Yeah, so the human brain I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a linguist, like a professional scientific degreed linguist that went to got a master's degree in linguistics or anything like that. I don't have that level, but my understanding, based off of the research and based off of just my understanding of things, is the human brain is designed for language. We sort of evolved this capacity for language, and it's just something that's naturally there as part of a baby's brain. And the funny thing is that you have to do what babies did. What you did in your native language as a baby, you have to essentially do that again as an adult. The difference is that as a baby, it happens automatically. So what does a baby do, right? They're surrounded by, if it's more than one language, then they'll do this for more than one language. But let's just keep it simple. Let's say your native language is Spanish, whatever. Okay. So you're surrounded by Spanish. You're constantly listening to Spanish as a little baby, right? Your brain is, continuing to develop and all this stuff. And your brain has all these neuron connections, right? And what happens is when you're first born, your brain can hear every sound that a human could make in any language. Okay, it has all these connections, so they can hear everything. But as you go through the first, say, like 6 months to 2 years of your life or so, your brain will naturally start to, we say, prune away, meaning remove the connections needed to hear other sounds that are not in your native language. Okay. During this process, right? So your ears are tuning themselves to the language around you. That's just something that happens in the human brain. Okay. It's tuning itself to the language around it, getting rid of the brain connections that it doesn't need, only the ones that it needs for the native language. And the little sounds that babies make, right? They make, they're making noises and stuff. They're not just making noises. They're playing with their mouth. They're playing with their tongue. They're listening to the sounds around them. And they're this is not conscious, right? They're not sitting there like, I need to make my tongue do this. No, they're just playing with what they hear. And they start developing like, oh, okay, if I hear this sound, it's like this. If I hear that sound, it's like this. And it just happens very naturally for a baby. That is a subconscious process, as far as I know. Maybe I don't think there's a whole lot of conscious effort from the baby because the brain isn't even fully developed yet. And so that's how you get your native language. And we know that some sounds in certain languages will actually take longer than that, like the Spanish R, rolling the r. Some Spanish speakers never develop that, right? Most of them do, but some don't. And it takes a little longer to master that, even though it's this natural process, not like sitting down and trying to do it. It just develops later. In English, the is one of the last sounds that is acquired or gained by a native speaking child. Usually what will happen up until the age of, I think it's between like 4 and 6 or something, they'll replace it with a W. And so instead of saying really, they'll say wee wee. Even that L might be like wee wee, like it's just two W's, right? Or brother, they'll say brother. So that ending sounds kind of like the British one, right? Brother. But then that first R, which is the consonant, it gets replaced by a W. And then eventually some speakers never develop it for whatever reason. Just like something doesn't quite go right in the brain and it doesn't happen for whatever reason. But most native speaking children will have that transition period where they're still trying to get the R into like the age of 6 or whatever. And then they'll develop it. My brother did that. He used to call me Big Brother. Yeah. And then after he was like 7 or 8, he started saying brother. So that's natural process. Now, for you as an adult, obviously, your brain has already pruned those connections. Now you can rebuild those connections. The brain is plastic. Okay. You can rebuild those connections through minimal pairs and stuff. I have lessons on a bunch of different minimal pairs between this sound and that sound. So you can start hearing the difference and train your ears, train your brain to rebuild some of those connections so that like, oh, okay, now I can hear the difference between e and a or e and I or whatever it is. So that's where you start. You train your ears so you can start to hear the difference. just like you did as a baby, you focus, right? You're hearing the sounds around you. Your brain is starting to say, okay, there's this sound and this sound and this sound. And then you start training your mouth. Okay. And the way you do that, there's different techniques. There's micro adjustments, like I was talking about earlier, where let's say you don't have I in your language. Maybe you have E and you have something like but you don't have I. So first you have to hear the difference. Then once you can hear the difference, you have to start training your mouth and say, okay, I know E is here. That's an anchor point. I know E is here. That's another anchor point. And I know I is supposed to be somewhere in between. So I need to get my tongue somewhere in between here and do something with the tenseness. I know it's on around the front of the tongue based on the vowel chart. That's a visual tool we use to see what's going on in the mouth. I know it's around here, but I need to find out how to actually shape my tongue and hold my tongue in a way to actually produce that sound, to produce I, right? And a lot of English learners, because they don't have I, if they want to say sit, they'll say seat or set. They'll go too high or too low, right? And you have to find that range of where that sound in the middle is. So it's a conscious process after a certain age. Like say if you're an adult, and that's fine, but it's essentially the same process, more or less. And you just have to retrain your mouth and your ears to perceive and produce this new set of sounds. Okay. At the end of the day, that's all it is. Now, it sounds very simple, and conceptually it is very simple, but actually doing it, you have to put in the effort, unfortunately. That's the biggest difference between babies or young children and adults. Is for babies and young children, the brain sort of handles it naturally. And after a certain age, it doesn't do that anymore. It just, because think about it evolutionarily, once you have a language, right, your brain doesn't need all those extra connections and resources for language, right? It's going to focus on the language that it's sort of grabbed onto based on what's around it. And so if you want to learn a new language, you have to train your brain instead of your brain just absorbing it, right? And then people who are talented would be people like, my theory is if you're talented at the pronunciation of languages, all it means, as far as I know, and according to my theory, my understanding of things, is that your brain didn't fully get rid of all those connections for whatever reason. Everybody's a little bit different, right? And so because you still have some of those connections, you have a little bit more ability to perceive certain sounds, to, try to start producing certain sounds. And then it seems, oh, this person is really good at languages and pronunciation because they can pick it up a lot easier than the other person. But those are special cases, right? The average person, in my belief, the average person, which most likely you are average, because that's why it's called average, can, with enough work and with the right techniques, can develop a native or near native accent. To get it 100% perfect, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. If you're talented, it's a little faster, a little easier, still a lot of work. If you're average, it's a little more work, it's a little harder, it takes a little longer. If you're below average, some people, they're not good at certain things. There might be a cap for how high you can get theoretically. I don't know. But the biggest mistake most people make is like they try it, especially if they take classes, which traditional classes are the worst thing you can do for language learning. And they take classes, or, they try it and it just doesn't work out very well. And they're like, I just don't have the language gene. It's just not for me. It's like, no, you're wrong, right? You're very likely you're wrong. One out of maybe, 1,000 people, maybe you're actually not good at languages or whatever, but you already speak one language, so most likely you are good at languages. It's a human thing. It's a very natural human thing. Anyway, subtleties, shades of gray, blah blah blah, that's essentially my answer to that. So you just have to use the right techniques. I'm going to be making more technique videos as we go. The minimal pairs are the big starting point, so start there if you can't hear the difference between some sounds. And then I have lessons on the different sounds, talking about like how to make the sounds physically and things like that. And you kind of just have to go with it and try to get feedback from a native speaker so that they can tell you how you sound. Okay. What's the logic of the preposition out in this phrasal verb? I'm finding out it would be truth with a th at the end. Truth. If you say true, it has to be true something. True is an adjective. I'm finding out. Okay, so to find out, I think I talk about this one in the book. Find out, maybe not. Okay, so can I remember the logic of out? Out is a very weird abstract preposition, and the logic is very, very abstract. But I'm going to try to do this simply. Definitely check out the book if you haven't yet, about just that chapter about the logic of out, because that's going to fill in some details that I'm not going to go into here if you haven't already seen it. But out is, in the broadest sense, tied to existence and non-existence. You can go out of existence, you can come into existence. And this is, again, a very abstract concept. So if I have a candle, right, if I have a candle and I light it, right, so it's burning, there's a flame on the candle, right? If I blow on the candle so that the flame disappears, we say I blow out the candle. Technically, I blow out the flame, but we say I blow out the candle. So that means I'm extinguishing the fire. I'm making the fire go out of existence, okay? But on the other side, if I come out with a new book, meaning I write a book, I publish it, the book has now come out. It is out. It is available to purchase, right? I have brought it into existence and released it to the public. So there's two ways you can look at that. It's either out to the public, or it was in non-existence and it's come out of non-existence into existence. Again, very abstract, I know. But that's kind of generally how out works. Very, very abstract. When you find out something, you find something out. So now we have a phrasal verb. There's find and there's the out. Okay, and there's also figure out, which is very similar, not exactly the same, because find and figure have some differences, and that creates the difference in the phrasal verbs. But find out, simply put, find, of course, is in a basic meaning you find something, right? So I'm walking and, oh, there's $1, right? I just found $1. My dollar now, right? Okay. Out, when you combine it with find, and there might be more than one meaning here. I'm just thinking of the basic meaning off the top of my head. There is something that, in this case, you don't know, right? So there's the truth. Okay. And let's say somebody lied to you, right? They say, oh, yeah, this happened. You're like, oh, okay. And then later, right, either somebody gives you evidence or you find evidence, right? It doesn't have to be you actually finding it, to use the phrasal verb. That's fine. But somehow you get this evidence, or this evidence comes to you, proving that what that person said is not true, right? Or maybe it's just a mystery. Like you don't know what the answer is. Nobody lied to you. You just don't know what is true, right? And so there's some evidence that tells you what is true, and you in some way found that evidence in an abstract way, right? Maybe you actually found it yourself, somebody gave it to you, whatever. But you now have that information, and that because it was hidden, you didn't know where it was, you didn't know what the truth was, you had to find it, right? Because that's what find is. It's something that it's often hidden, or you just didn't know it was there. Like I found $1. Oh, I didn't know there was $1 here, but I found it, right? Or I'm looking for my wallet. I don't know where my wallet is, and it's underneath the blanket, right? It was hidden under the blanket, so I found it. So find out, because that truth was hidden, right? Now it has come out. The truth has come out. That's a phrase we have, right? The truth is out, meaning it has been released. Now you know it, right? You didn't know what it was because it was hidden, and now it's out. Now, can you say, I'm finding the truth? You could. The difference between find and find out, actually, it might depend on the context, but it's basically the same thing. Remember, sometimes the preposition isn't completely necessary. We like to do this a lot with up, where we'll add up when we don't need it, and it doesn't actually change the meaning much. but you can find the truth or find out the truth. And there's not much difference in that particular case. So the out really isn't necessary, because the find actually contains it. The truth was hidden and then you found it, but then the out, it just naturally goes because of the logic of out. We naturally like to sort of put that together. It's not required in this case. So I hope that makes sense. I know it's very abstract, but hopefully that makes sense. And to tie that into this sort of what I was saying about like going out of existence or going out of non-existence into existence, in a very abstract way, that still works because your knowledge of the truth didn't exist. You don't know what the truth is, so it doesn't exist in your brain. The truth is the truth. Whatever it is, it exists. But in your knowledge, in your mind, you don't know what it is. It doesn't exist here. And so when you find the truth or find out the truth, now it's like it's come out of hiding, that hidden place where it was in non-existence for your mind, and now it's come into your mind. Now you have that information, you know what the truth is, and so it's come out of non-existence into existence, or you can say it's come out of not being in your knowledge, so it's outside of your knowledge to coming inside of your knowledge. So it's leaving not knowledge and coming into knowledge. Again, very abstract. I know it can be kind of confusing. Out is a bit of a difficult one because it is very abstract. But hopefully that makes sense. Is find in a phrasal verb? Can I form phrasal verbs by my own as I'm doing with find in? I don't think find in is a phrasal verb. You can find something in something else, like I found my wallet in the box, but that's not find in. That's just find, and then where was it? It was in the box. I don't think find in means anything. Native speakers do spontaneously create phrasal verbs that don't exist. Okay, we don't necessarily do it all the time every day, but depending on the exact context, the exact situation we see, there's a particular verb and a particular preposition that can kind of come together based on how that verb works in the subconscious and how the preposition works in the subconscious under the surface, and it kind of naturally expresses this thing. Okay, I'm horrible at thinking of examples like that. I always forget to write them down when I find them, but so it is possible if you have the logic of the prepositions and a very, like, I guess the logic or the essence of the verb really solidly in your mind like a native, then you will start to spontaneously create phrasal verbs that make sense. Even if they don't actually exist as like standard phrasal verbs, they will work and they will make sense to other natives, not just in a general logical way, but actually to other natives. They'll be like, oh yeah, that works perfectly fine and it describes the situation. When I was first writing the book, I was testing some of my conclusions about, okay, the logic of this is this, logic of this is that. I was testing on some of my students and going through sort of a little mini course with them. And I didn't do this with a lot of students, but several of the students that I was working with, they started to naturally create phrasal verbs spontaneously. Some of their tries at making these phrasal verbs didn't quite work. Or they were a little confusing based on certain other connections under the surface. But I would say maybe 2/3 of the time, the phrasal verbs that they were spontaneously creating either worked just fine or are phrasal verbs that do exist as like standard phrasal verbs in the language, but they did not know those phrasal verbs. They just naturally used them. Which helped me further feel that my approach and my idea that there is some sort of connection under the surface that you can find logically to build up the feeling that idea is correct. Because I was seeing proof through the students that I was working with. But not everything that like, if you just try to take a random verb and a random preposition and put them together, maybe in a generally logical way, it could make sense. But remember, every language has its own personality, and you can't just randomly throw two things together, unfortunately. It would be nice if it worked that way. It would be a lot easier because you could just, build whatever you want. But there are certain limitations and restrictions based on how the subconscious network of connections is built. So it's an ongoing process. You'll kind of find, oh, okay, this one works. Oh, that one doesn't. You just have to maybe ask sometimes, like here, I don't think find in exists. If it does, I can't think of it off the top of my head, so it wouldn't be a common one. Okay, hey, your voice today as if you were 20 years older. Really? I guess I'm dying. I'm dying. Anyway, pretty sure it's the mic. I'm so behind already. Good job. Is the T in points dropped, and is the S pronounced as a Z in that case? Excellent question, Wendell. So I've mentioned this a couple times before. When you have a TS combination, the T does not exist. The T does not exist. Okay. Now, there is a way that you can overemphasize and sort of separate out the T and S, which is an extreme case. We don't normally do that. But I could say, for example, what's your name? Let's say I say, what's your name? And you're like, what? What's your name? What? You don't understand. I say, what's your name? I might do it that way where I like push out the T and then go into that S. And you got to hear that T pushing out. But normally, what's? There's actually no T there. What's happening when you have a TS combination like that, or even a DZ, because they're both voice DZ combination, Fines isn't the best one. Also, keep in mind the N can have an influence here, but when you have a TS combination, regardless of if there's an N before it, what's happening is you're going into this, especially if there's an N, because you're already going into that position for the N, but even if there's no N, like what's, okay? You're going into this position, which would be the TDN position. It's the same position up here, not touching the teeth, not flat. It's up here, right here, okay? So you go into that position, and then if there were actually a T there, it would be points, or what. We don't speak that way, okay? What happens is you're in that position, and you push the S through that. So instead of a normal S, like poise or was, okay, it's not, you're not doing a straight S, you're doing a modified S that starts from this closed position. That's all it is. It's just an S that starts from here instead of here. Okay. And that's just how the physical mechanics of the mouth work. So anytime you see TS or DZ, there's actually no T or D. Okay. Maybe there's some exceptions to that. I don't think so. There shouldn't be any exception to that. Definitely standard most of the time. Like you see TS at the end of a word, even if it's a contraction, what is, what's, or it is, it's just an S that's pushed through that position. There's no actual T or D there. Does it get pronounced as a Z? No. That would be poins, right? Or if I did what's, it'd be what was or something like was, yeah. Poise was it poise was, yeah, it doesn't work. There's no reason to make it into a Z. Now there may be some words where maybe it does happen to be pronounced as a Z, but that I don't think that would usually happen. And you can think of it as like the T, because there's no actual T there, but because T is voiceless, or it would be voiceless, it sort of probably tries to keep it as an S. And if it were a D, like a DZ, because D would be voiced, it would keep it as a Z. But you wouldn't change the S to a Z randomly. No. Is the T in monster pronounced as a D? Good question. I've addressed this before as well. I don't have an official lesson on a lot of these little points or anything, so people keep asking them. That's fine. When you have ST, now ST at the end, we usually just drop the T, right? But when you have ST, like start or monster, when you have KT, like actor, when you have FT, like after, there's two ways to look at it. My stance is that I kind of get rid of the problem, because different people sort of give you slightly different answers. What's happening here is it's still a T. It's still a T, okay? But the S, the K, or the F before the T, not between words, but just, inside the word, it sort of weakens the T, makes into a very weak T. And the weak versions of the stop sounds the weak versions of the weak versions of the stop sound similar to the voiced, even if they're voiceless. So like if it's a P, if I say happy, 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 because we're not pushing that P out with as much force because it's weak, it's unstressed, it sounds kind of like a weak B, right? It sounds kind of like a weak B, but it's not, it's a P, right? When you have T is usually a little crisp. So if it's just a normal weak T that doesn't turn into a flap D or there's no S before or something, you will still hear a bit of that crispness. Like if I say totality, the first T to totality, that will still, it doesn't quite sound like a D, right? Because just how the T works, the T and D works. But when we have this combination of ST, KT, FT, it weakens the T into a very weak version of the T, and it sounds similar to a D, especially if there's a vowel after it, because T going to vowel wants to flap. It wants to turn to a flap D. But it doesn't actually flap unless the sound before it is also a vowel, right? And so even if, say, if you go from last and offer, right, now you have ST plus something else, last offer. Now you say last offer, just drop the T, but last offer. It's going to sound kind of like a D because it wants to flap into a D, but it can't with that S. So two ways to look at it. Either it wants to become a D because of the vowel, or it's just a really weak T, and the weak versions tend to sound kind of like the weak versions of the voiced version of that sound, paba, kaga, tada. But it is technically still a T. Now, I get rid of this problem by saying that in the combination of ST, KT, and FT, that T will sound so similar to a weak D that it doesn't really matter. And you can just go ahead and say it as a weak D. Okay. So I would say, technically speaking, it is still a T, but go ahead and do a weak D. So if you say monster, like it's clearly a D, but it's weak. It's not monster, right? That's not right. Monster. Okay. I don't see the reason to split hairs and be super technically accurate about it. Just make it a weak D because it's going to sound perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Okay. Now, I will say, this has come up several times today, which is very interesting. But again, if we, for some reason, in an extreme case, if we really overemphasize the word, right? And I say, oh, that's a real monster. I might push it out as a T because it's supposed to be a T, right? This is why technically I say it's still a T, even if it sounds like a D. So if you really over exaggerate it, it should remain a T, okay? Unless you're just emphasizing that stress part, the first part, which would be normal. Monster. It's a monster. Monsters still sound like a D. But if you emphasize the whole word, really exaggerate in an extreme case, monster, it should be more of a T. That's an extreme case. Most of the time, it'll sound more like a D. So I think that's just proof that technically it is a T. But in real life, most of the time, not in that extreme case, it sounds close enough to a D that it doesn't matter. Just make it a weak D. How to pronounce the past? Wait, the past in pronounced? Oh, the past of, like the past version of the word pronounce, I guess. Is it with a Z at the end followed by a D? Pronounced. No, because that C is an S sound. Okay. C's don't, maybe there's some exceptions again, but usually the letters that represent the S sound are usually the letter S, of course, and the letter C. Okay. Now, there are times when C would represent a K sound and times when it would represent a S sound, K or S. In this case, pronounce, it's an S sound. Okay. And notice also pronounce, just like you're asking about points. It's the exact same combination. There's no T written here. This is one reason why I say the T is an illusion. There's actually no T in the word points or in what's. Because if we don't have a T and we go from N to S, that same position, it sounds exactly the same. Okay. So just a little note there as well. But that C, I don't think C ever represents Z. Maybe there's some weird, I guess Tsar, maybe like CZAR, the Tsar of Russia. I mean, but there's also a Z there. Like it's just written with a silent C at the beginning or whatever. And there's different ways to say that. But normally, no, the C is not going to represent a Z sound. And just because you see it at the end, it's not just going to magically become a Z. And because the C is an S sound in that word, that ED ending will become a T sound like we talked about before, pronounced. Okay, don't say pronounced. That's not right. Okay. Have you ever heard about the Northern accent versus the Midland accent in the USA? Do they have any important differences in vowels? Okay, so, well, I'm not a 100% expert on this. I've done my research, and as I've said, there's more than one neutral accent. So there's you have to carve this up a little bit more. So there's north, which we would consider like, there's like the, I don't even know how exactly to describe that, but think of it as like, okay, if you have like the north of the country going east to west, and you take sort of like the middle of that, more or less, like there's this chunk. It's like say Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, in that area, they do definitely have something of a vowel shift. Not all speakers necessarily, but like someone from Minnesota, right? Instead of, notice I'm saying Minnesota, right? And I think somebody from the like North Midland, not the Midland, but the North Midland, which would be slightly to the east of what we're calling the North, they would probably pronounce it more or less like I do, Minnesota. But somebody from Minnesota might say Minnesota. Okay, for some reason I did a dental D there. It's not right, but they tend to sort of draw out some of those vowels. Or North Dakota. I'm from North Dakota, right? And it almost starts sounding a little bit like there's some Canadian influence there. We've talked about before how like a lot of Canadians sound pretty much the same as Americans, minor adjustments, but there is a Canadian accent that some Canadians have that sounds very distinctly Canadian to us. And so that is sort of a special, what we would generally think of as north, right? The Midland would technically be like, I guess, through the Midwest. And as you go from sort of this like northern area and you start moving farther and farther south, the accent starts getting more and more southern, right? So there's a bit of a range through the middle of the country. A lot of people in the Midwest say like Missouri. Missouri is like right in the middle of the country. I lived there for a couple of years. I did not notice an accent from most people there when I was there. But some people do, right? And the farther south you go down into like Arkansas, over into Tennessee, you really start getting more of that southern type sound. Now the North Midland, not just the North, but the North Midland, which is we would think of as like the Great Lakes area. So like Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, right? In Pennsylvania, in through there. That is what is normally taught by most teachers as the neutral accent, even though it's not the neutral accent. And what they teach you is also a semi-fake accent. But then there's the northeastern around New England, which sounds a little bit different than the North Midland, sounds a little bit different than Western American, or even the Pacific Northwest up in Alaska and Washington. Little changes, but we all generally sound pretty much the same, and they all sound neutral for the most part. There's little regional differences in this and that, whatever, but I'm not an expert enough in all like the regions of the United States to know about like every little, vowel change and difference like that. That's something that you would have to study yourself. There are resources online for that. Wikipedia is a good resource for that. But yeah, I would say that the northern accent, like I was talking about, like with Minnesota, that is now accented. That's not neutral anymore. But the North Midland, around Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, some speakers do have maybe a little bit more of an accent. I know there's the northern cities vowel shift in that area where some speakers, they're starting to say things a little differently, or they have, it's not like super new. It's been happening for a while, but where I think an example I saw is like the name Ian, 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 will be pronounced exactly the same as Anne, or almost the same as Anne. So there's some interesting things happening for some speakers in that region, but a lot of the speakers there will sound very neutral like me. It's just maybe they don't have the cot merger, for example, or maybe they say news instead of news. So anyway, can also say, so can we also say the table's leg to mean the leg of the table? Yes, in that case, they both work. A lot of the time, the apostrophe S possessive form and the of, a lot of the time they'll both work. But English tends to prefer the possessive form, the apostrophe S. And so even though sometimes you say the of version, like I want you to think, because your question is, which this may not be true. The question to me, maybe it's just this one particular case that you have a question about, but the question to me, you might have in your head that like something of something is the normal way to show possession, and it is not. Of is not about possession. Possession is one expression, one surface meaning of the logic of that it can have, but of is not about possession. In English, the most common standard normal way to show possession is with that apostrophe S. Okay. Often of will also work. It doesn't always work, and sometimes it will be grammatically correct. It'll just sound unnatural because nobody would speak that way, or most people wouldn't speak that way. So when in doubt, use the apostrophe S version. That should be the standard that you think of. Try to use that form rather than the of form. But anyway, yes, the table's leg is perfectly fine. Happy Christmas Eve and Merry Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. I guess for Christmas Eve, actually, we could say Happy Christmas Eve, but yeah, we say Merry Christmas, so probably say Merry Christmas Eve. Yeah. They both sound kind of weird. Merry Christmas Eve, Happy Christmas Eve. Probably because we don't say it as much, we just say Merry Christmas. But yes, and again, as I mentioned before, Steve, welcome to somebody else who said the same thing. It is still the 23rd here. So Christmas Eve is actually tomorrow. Christmas Eve's day is tomorrow, which you're in Brazil, so it should still be the 23rd where you are. So Christmas Day, the day before is Christmas Eve day, and the day before that is really nothing. Is there any difference between protected and protective? I mean, they have the same root. They mean roughly the same thing, but they're going to be used in different places. They can both be adjectives. So like this is a protected. I don't know, a protected area. I don't know. So there's defense in this area to protect whoever. I don't know. It's a protected area. Or like for wildlife, it's a wildlife refuge, so it's protected. You can't just like go and dump chemicals or build a house because it's for wildlife. So it's a protected region. Protective. So protected means that it is in the state of being under protection. Right, protection is the noun, so it's under protection. Protective means that it gives protection. So if I wear, let's say I'm using a saw to saw wood, right? Well, there might be a lot of, or say metal, especially as I'm trying to saw metal. There could be a lot of like sparks or debris that like comes up, might get in my eyes. So I might wear, I don't know, some special glasses or goggles, and they would be protective glasses, protective goggles, meaning that they give protection to my eyes. So now my eyes are protected. They are under protection because of the goggles. So they're related, but they're used in slightly different ways. Does the A version of the O sound, as in hot, have a kind of relaxed, we need the ED there, pronounces a T, relaxed, sound as the one on your last video about ass sound, as in cat? Hold on, I have to understand the question. Okay, I think I see what you're asking. Again, as I've said many times before, there is no A version of O. Okay. And again, this comes down to like the IPA and the way that things are transcribed and talked about. It's like the short O or some nonsense like that is not in any way accurate for English. Technically it is, but it's just confusing. Okay. Within the context of English, it doesn't make any sense. Hot, whether you have the merger or you don't have the merger, is not an A sound. Okay, I want you to get that out of your head. It is not an A in any way. It is not an A sound. It's not ah. It's not ah. It's, well, I mean, I guess ah. See, this is the problem, because we say, okay, well, ah and ah are A sounds because they're commonly spelled with the letter A. They're not A sounds. Okay, the sound in hot is either ah or ah, depending if you have the merger. Neither of those have anything to do with the letter A. The way that this is normally taught, sorry, I'm going to go on a rant here. The way that this is normally taught confuses the letters with the sounds, and it mixes everything up in your brain. Okay, you want to separate the letters from the sounds. Separate the letters from the sounds. It's one of my pet peeves. It annoys me a lot. But to answer your question, because I'm pretty sure I understand what your question is here. Basically, so whether it's, say, ah, like the merged version, or ah, the unmerged version, is there a sort of a lazy way to do that sound? Like if I were to say hot, is there like a fully enunciated way and then sort of a lazier way, right? That's the question. Technically and technically not. So I want you to have this concept, okay? The reason why, for example, in the case of ah, the reason why there's the lazy ah, right? It's still the same sound. The quality is slightly different, but a native speaker's ear would recognize it as a perfectly fine ah sound, right? The reason why there's a lazy version is because ah is so far forward, so far open in the fully clearly enunciated version that we're not usually going to take the time to get all the way into that sound, right? If we're emphasizing, if we're really clearly enunciating a word that uses that sound, it's stressed, whatever. If it's stressed and enunciated, not just stressed, then yes, we will open up more. But that's true for any sound, generally speaking. Obviously, E doesn't necessarily open much, a lot, but it's going to be more clearly pronounced. So technically speaking, for all consonants, for all vowels, there is a lazier version and there is a more clear, enunciated, full version. And it just depends on how clearly you're enunciating. This goes back to that range that I was talking about, right? There's this clearly enunciated, slower speech area that we don't usually speak in, unless we'll dip into it when we need to. Then there's sort of the normal range, which has a little bit of a slower side, a little bit of a faster side, but there's this normal range that we're usually operating in. And this is where the lazy versions start coming into effect. So the lazy ah would be in this normal range. In the fast, of course, definitely in fast speech, the lazy versions are going to be like the normal thing that happens pretty much all the time. But even in this normal range, we tend to use those lazier versions. Just because we don't want to take the time to open all the way up like we would over here. So when we say cat, right, normally you won't see a native say, oh, I see a cat. I see a cat. No, you'll say, I see a cat. I see a cat. Cat, not cat, cat. I see a cat. We're not going to take the time to open. So is there a lazy version of ah? Yeah. But all you do is you just don't open your mouth as much. Okay. And this is one reason why you have to have full mastery of the mouth posture, right? This is why I can say e, I, ah, ah, well, o, oo, o. Okay, without really opening my mouth much at all, it's going to make the sounds, the exact quality of the sounds, a little bit different, but they sound like the English sounds, right? I'm able to hit all of the sounds because I'm using the right posture, and I'm using the space that I'm giving myself, this small space, to maneuver to all the sounds that I need to hit. You can technically hit all of the sounds without opening your mouth a lot. Now, ah and ah are the two most open sounds. And so there is something that you can identify as a lazy ah, which is, in a way, it's kind of special because it's like, okay, yeah, we're not opening as much, but all we're really doing is like, there's just this little shift in the shape of the tongue, right? And that's worth talking about, because especially if you confuse eh and ah, that's part of the reason, because natives often use the lazy ah, and it can seem closer to eh because it's not opening as much, right? Where ah, if I say saw, okay, I'm not usually going to say, oh, I saw a man. I saw a man. No, I'm going to say, I saw a man. I saw a cat. I saw a cat. Okay. Now, relatively speaking, even if I don't open as much, in general, through the flow of speech, even the E sound, the mouth is a little more open compared to certain other languages like Russian and Spanish that have a bit more of a closed position, a little bit of a tighter mouth posture. And the mouth doesn't need to be open as much. So I'm not saying that, you should close your mouth more. In fact, you should probably open your mouth more depending on your native language. But the point here is that you don't have to always go into this fully enunciated open position for ah and ah just to produce those sounds. Okay, especially in the flow of normal speech or especially fast speech. If you're enunciating, we tend to open up more. It's just natural, right? Because if you're going slower, you're speaking more clearly, you're going to naturally go into the full, more open position. So, I don't think it's really worth talking about a lazy ah, because there's nothing special about it. You just don't open your mouth as much. As long as you can still hit that sound with, opening a little less, you're fine. It's the same thing. It's just you're not opening as much. With the ah, technically that's what's happening. But as I said, because of some confusion between eh and ah, and because it's really just this little shape difference instead of the height difference, that's worth talking about, I think. Where the ah, it's not really worth talking about. Okay. So good. You're welcome. No, it doesn't, Wendell. And Josh, what the heck happened to your voice? I want to hear myself now. Actually, I do have these headphones that are supposed to be studio playback headphones. I wonder if I can hear myself, because there might be something really wrong with this mic at this point. But yes, I'm pretty sure it's the mic. No, it doesn't, Wendell. So what are you responding to? I guess you're responding to his last question. I wonder if this will work. Let's see. Let's find out. I don't even know how this works. That would clearly go over here. Yeah. This would go over here. I don't know if I have to do anything special. Test, hello. Yeah, I don't hear myself. So I don't know. I have to look up how to make that work. Or maybe it plugs into that. I don't know. I have to figure it out. Oh, actually, no, that maybe this goes in here. This goes in here. Ugh. Hello. Still don't hear myself. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, now I hear myself. Do you guys still hear me? I hear background noises. Why am I only hearing myself through here? Hello? Yeah, I only hear it through one side. I guess you're supposed to do that. I don't know. Oh. Direct stereo. Hello? Oh, now I hear myself in both. Okay. Hello? I don't know. I think I sound normal, a little echoey maybe. Maybe it's because of where I am and I have less space to the wall. I don't know. Maybe the computer here is creating audio distortion. So weird listening to myself. Oh, this is kind of cool though. Okay, anyway, whatever. Unplug that. All right, so back to what we're doing. So far behind. We have about an hour left, guys. Keep that in mind. 1 hour left. I'm gonna try to catch up here. With that, okay. Lovely Christmas. If you sound that, it sounds like you're describing that particular Christmas. It was a lovely Christmas. That's not a greeting, dude. Like, oh, lovely Christmas. No, don't say that. Now, maybe if it's Christmas Day and you see somebody and you say lovely Christmas, meaning like a short form of, hey, we're having a lovely Christmas, or this year is a lovely Christmas. It's a great day because, the day is going well. Then you might say it as sort of a greeting in a way, but it's a short form of a full sentence. It's not the normal thing we would say. Can you use the dental T or D when there isn't anything after or a consonant from the next word? Okay. Can you use a dental T or D when there isn't anything after or a consonant from the next word? Okay. So I'm pretty sure, and welcome back. I think I was calling you Tilly. That was easier to say. I haven't seen you in a while, so welcome. But I have a lesson. I think I talked about it in that lesson about the T and D. I posted that like a month ago or something. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. But if there's not anything after it, it's still technically possible, but it's less likely. We tend to use it less if there's nothing after it. So if I say what with, right? Like, oh, I'm going to clean this. I'm like, well, we don't have any tools. So what are you going to clean it with? Right? Now, if I say, what are you going to clean it with? Might happen. It's okay, but it's just, okay. So it doesn't tend to be used as much if there's nothing after it. But as soon as there is anything after it, especially a consonant, there's no problem. So if I say with what, or with what, no problem. If I say the path lasts forever, the path lasts forever, path lasts. Now it's a little bit of a weird one, the dental to the L, maybe a little difficult to do with the tongue there, but you do it. Actually might be easier in that case to not do the dental versus say the path lasts. Or if I say, let's say it's a vowel, math is, okay, you can link the regular TH. We know consonants connect to vowels. So that's why math is. Or you do a dental, math is. Math is really hard. Now, when it is, like if you have the TH in the middle of a word, it's also not quite as common, but it does happen very commonly. In fact, I saw an English teacher the other day say author as author. They just naturally said it that way. I'm not even talking about like the pronunciation of TH. They just said the word author with this dental version. So the single most common place where we use this dental T or D version of the TH is at the start of the word, like especially these common words like this, that, these, those, the, other, things like that. Other, we actually, because it's in the middle, we might tend to use that lazy one, but I guess, yeah, it's not the start, obviously. I was thinking of common words. Other's a common word. So this, that, these, those, the, right? Like 99% of the time, we're going to use that dental version. You don't have to. It's just a common thing. In the middle, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You can use it. It's just we don't. I think we maybe use it like half the time. If that, it's not quite as frequent. It doesn't matter. Whichever one comes out is fine. At the end, if there's nothing after it, we tend not to use it, but you can. And anything after it, it makes it now linkable in some way, whether it's to that consonant or to that vowel, and we'll tend to use it very frequently. But again, you don't have to use it. It's just a common variation. So Yeah, technically you can use it any time. It's just there's certain places and cases where it's less likely. And the least likely, relatively speaking, would be at the end with nothing after it. So, yeah. David has some deleted messages. Coming back to the lazy topic, and this is my last question regarding the topic. That's okay. You can ask as many questions as you want. You use a before in saying, rang, hang, whereas some other dialects use yes. On numerous occasions, someone at some point has asked you to say those words with the rather than a, and you always said it sounds either British or it's just uncomfortable for you to say it that way. Yes, okay. Well, not necessarily my initial impression, I think, was British. Now that my ears are a little more tuned to the other neutral dialects, it's my ears have accepted it as an American variation, but traditionally it always seemed very British to me because I never really noticed Americans using it. So, okay, if you use the lazy instead, would you still feel that way? And is the vowel in sang, rang, hang always a in your accent, or could you sometimes use an instead? Fantastic questions. Okay, so first, as I said, I think it was in the lesson about the truth about before n and m. Is always . Okay. Now, yes, there are dialectical variations within American English or between regions like British versus American, which at that point we don't really care anymore because we're focused on American English. But there are within English and even within American English dialectical or regional variations where if they say it with and that's just how they speak, that's fine. Whether it's lazy or full whatever, that's how they speak. It's fine. It's fine. Me, the way that I would think of the sound, the way that I would pronounce the sound, first for the lazy So if I use the lazy instead of a, so instead of saying either sang or sang, right, which is very uncomfortable, if I use the lazy and I say, cat, sang, sang, he sang a song, he sang a song, he sang a song, he sang a song. It seems a bit more acceptable to my ears and to my tongue. It's definitely not as hard to say. Maybe if I'm being lazy, it'll come out that way, I guess. I wouldn't think that I would do that. Possibility. I definitely would still think that I would say the a versus the lazy, or the a diphthong instead of the lazy Maybe it could happen, maybe, but my official answer would be no, it's not lazy either. Now, the speakers who do use in sang, rang, and hang, or whatever, they would probably commonly use the lazy version because, again, we don't tend to open all the way up. And so that might be why it sounds a little bit more acceptable to my ears. Because it's at that point, it's obviously it's not a, but it's kind of closer to a, like the a diphthong. And so maybe my ears are just like, yeah, okay, it doesn't sound too bad. As for replacing a with so instead of saying sang, if I said sang, or rang, that is a lazy way to change the vowel here. Yes. Instead of doing the full a, you can either just do the first part of the diphthong, which we know we commonly tend to cut the diphthong and just use the first part. And probably because of that, if you get a little bit lower in this particular combination with the before the ng, the vowel, it doesn't sound too bad. It just seems kind of lazy, like I'm really not fully pronouncing the sound. So that can happen. Yeah. I would still identify it as a. I would teach it as a. I would say that it's supposed to be a, unless, of course, regional differences, that's a slightly different accent. That's okay. But in the way that I speak, it's supposed to be a. And then there's some maybe lazy variation there. That happens. Okay. So that would be my stance on that. Finn, welcome, Finn. To me, the diphthong in rain is not the same as the one in anger. The one in anger sounds more like the first vowel sound in the word air. And in rain, the first sound is closer to a Spanish or Portuguese sound. Did you just go through puberty? I know everybody's commenting on it. I don't know what's wrong with the microphone. I don't know. I sound normal. Pretty sure it's a microphone. Whatever. Maybe I'll just delete this recording afterwards. But anyway. Okay, if I say rain, so I'm going to fully enunciate and fully pronounce it very clearly here. Rain, 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 anger, anger, rain, anger. To me, it's the exact same sound. Now, of course, if you're within the standard that we're talking about here, because as we just talked about, there's within some of the other neutral accents, they wouldn't use a at all for anger. They would use anger, right? In which case that would be different. But as long as we're within the same thing here of how I pronounce things, how I speak based on Western American English, rain and anger it's the exact same sound. What I would say, the reason why it might sound a little bit different, aside from maybe when we get a little lazy with it, right? Maybe we cut the diphthong, rain, instead of rain, 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 rain. Okay, not quite ren. That would be a different thing. It's like a straight eh. So if we just cut that diphthong or only partially get up into the I at the end, rain. It's gonna rain, 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 rain. So it's kind of like re, rain, rain, rain. Okay, with just a little bit of an either or an either. Anger, same thing. We can get lazy with it. Instead of saying anger, we can say anger. We cut the diphthong. Okay, so that number one, if it's pronounced lazily, in either case, it probably will sound closer to that Portuguese sound, the Spanish Portuguese sound, because technically the start of a is the sound in, at least in Spanish. I'm not as familiar with Portuguese. I assume it's the same since you're listing them under the same category. So that would make sense. But between them, if you're hearing like, okay, well, this one sounds different than this one, regardless of the laziness, like fully enunciated, I would say that probably why that's happening is because it may not be the exact combination. I would think here, right, we have an to a, which is going to cause a little bit of distortion. Anytime you go from one sound to another sound, regardless of what sound it is, especially going into vowel sounds, wherever you're coming from is going to slightly distort the sound. So if I go from k to a, or t to a, or I don't know, f to a, right? K. Where's this K? There's this weird thing coming, and we don't notice it. It just happens in transition. K. If I say tay. Now that weird little thing that was happening with the K is gone, because this part is I'm not moving from here into A. I'm moving from here into A. Or if I say they or they, right? They. Those are pretty close. There's not probably going to be. It's going to be the same type of distortion. But going from K, we can hear there's a little something different. So I think going from rain, R to A, and then into N, because of that, versus going straight into A and then into instead of right? Now you're going ain, ang, ain. Let me keep the intonation the same. Ain, ang, ain, ang. That's not quite the same intonation. It's really hard to keep them equal, but that alone, going from one end to the front end to the back end, is going to cause a little bit of distortion, and I think that would partially explain what's going on there. But if you ask me, I would say they are the exact same vowel sound. Now, air. What does air use? Air, the way that I teach it to make it simple, is it's an R-colored eh, because it can be just an eh that's R-colored. Right, that's a perfectly fine thing. Still sounds very neutral. It's very normal. You can actually say, you can R-color a instead of eh and say air. That's okay. It's okay. The way I teach it, it's like, why do that when you can, like why R-color something that doesn't have to be R-colored? And so I'm trying to, there's ear or ear, which is same range. It doesn't matter which one you hit, ear, air, or ear, or sorry, ear or ear. So the E or I, that's one R colored vowel. Air is another R colored vowel. R is another, and then or. So it just leaves us 4 R colored vowels. Makes it a lot simpler. And then the I could be R colored as well, and we will commonly R color, but also again, you don't have to R color it. So, I talk about all that in the R color vowel lessons. So technically, you could use A in air. That's fine. So you're not wrong there, but rain, anger, and air, if you use A in air, they would all be the same. Okay. How do you pronounce Elena? Elena. Okay, good. So now, because it's spelled with an E, this is not a normal spelling that I see for this name. In English, what I'm familiar with, if it's like, I would think of it like this, or maybe like this. I've seen those spellings before. Maybe there's some others off the top of my head. Usually I think of it as starting with the letter A, even though we don't pronounce like A or A or something like that. So because I saw that E, I wanted to say Elena. But provided it's supposed to be pronounced the same as the name that I'm used to in English, you can reduce it to you can say Elena, that's fine. Probably not, because it's spelled with an E, maybe. I guess it becomes an option, but in English, usually Elena, I haven't really heard that as the pronunciation of the name. I is another reduction. I and are both common reductions. So you can say Elena, you can say Elena, Elena. It's okay. Here, I think the schwa would probably be most common. Okay, and then for the second part, so notice I keep saying E, right? Lee. There is the name Elena, which, again, I wouldn't spell it this way, the way you're spelling it. So Elena, no. So the AI, no, but EI, L-A-E-I, Elena, possible. Elena, possible. Elena. Elena, maybe. I don't think I've heard it pronounced that way too much. If somebody's name is pronounced that way, that's fine. But and then the N part, would just be N. So a couple possibilities for the first part, a couple possibilities for the second part. Most likely schwa and then E, I would say, or schwa and A. So Elena or Elena. Again, English, like, we don't even know. Like, if I see somebody's name spelled that way, or even in the English way, like, it might be spelled one way, but maybe they pronounce it E instead of A. I had a friend like that in high school. Her name was Alina, but based on the way her name was spelled, which was actually spelled like this, I didn't know if I should say Alina or Elena. And at first I was saying Elena, and she's like, no, my name's not Elena, it's Alina. I was like, oh, okay. So we may not even be able to tell based on the spelling in English, because, again, English does not have a phonetic script. So, it's kind of weird, isn't it? I'm starting to find the vowel in anger to be a bit distinct from the ordinary A as well, but it might just be because of the nasal. To me, the difference is really clear. I don't think it's due to being nasal vowel. Steven, Stefan. This one kind of bugs me. I mean, if your name is spelled one of these ways, I'm not saying you, but if somebody's name is spelled one of these ways and they choose to pronounce it in a way that I would disagree with, that's their name. I'm not saying it's wrong. To me, it's always been, there's Steven, because it's spelled with a V, and then the PH would be Stefan with an A and an F sound, Stefan. Now, I've seen people spelled with the PH version and they pronounce their name Steven, which bugs me and is very confusing and annoying. But if that's how they pronounce and spell their name, that's how they pronounce and spell their name. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. But if you ask me, the PH one should be Stefan, not Steven. So take that as you will. Is the word nab used? Nab is a word that we use, yeah. And it's a good point. A little side note here. verbs, right? This is true in languages in general, right? Say if you're writing a story, right, or whatever, and you say he picked up, like, I don't know, he picked the container up from the table, right? He picked it up from the table. Okay, that's very descriptive. Okay, that's perfectly fine. If I say he grabbed the container from the table, that sounds a little more accurate, like grabbed it, right? Okay, but it may not be very forceful. Just okay, he grabbed it, fine, whatever. This is another way to describe the same thing, basically, in the context. Now, if I use nab, he nabbed it off the table. Now it sounds like whoosh, or snatch, nab, snatch, very similar. He snatched it off the table. He nabbed it off. It sounds like he very quickly grabbed it, pulled it away, right? So different words have different sort of effects behind them. They'll feel slightly different. Some will be stronger, some will be weaker. We'll use the word nab if we want to show grabbing something in sort of a forceful way. Also, nab tends to be used in the context of maybe stealing stuff. So context is usually important for verbs as well, but it's not the most common everyday word, but we use it. It's a fine word. Please talk about lip movement. So lip movement, no S there. Lip movements. I've learned and improved my American accent in U.S.-based call center, but I am still studying abroad. Placement and mouth movements. Letting people appreciate me for my American accent. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so, well, it looks like all this is connected here. I've completed my 6-month accent course where they would teach sounds, intonation, connect speech, and stress patterns, teach some exercises to speak from the back of the mouth. I've discovered some placement exercises myself because I couldn't find any video that had me so far. Okay, so all that's kind of related. I'm trying to go through this piece by piece here quickly. I talk about the lip movement in various lessons. With the exception of o, u, and ow, and w, the w consonant, the lips aren't particularly important. And in faster speech, it's even less important, except for maybe with the w. But like, for example, when we say or sh, or I'm trying to think of another one. There's another one, but like or sh, like the sh or the r, it's very common and natural for us to sort of stick the lips sort of like up, but they don't really come out too much. But it might come out a little bit. Sh, right? We go sh, right? We say sh, whatever lips. Is that required to make the sound? No. Sh, sh, sh. She doesn't like it. She. You might see my lips come out a little bit. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. It's not actually required for the sound. It's just something that we naturally do. Same with right. It's not really required. Also, what I call the high schwa. Lips kind of come out. You don't need it. It's good. Not required. For oo, o, ow, and w, the w sound, the w obviously it comes way out. In faster speech, it can come out a little bit less. But very important for w. Very nice and tight, closed. If I'm speaking quickly, okay. O, u, and ow will end about there. They don't go all the way into w. O, oo, ow. Fully enunciated, especially for exaggerating, the lips will kind of come up and around. O, oo, ow. Okay. They don't close all the way into w. They go into sort of that faster, lazier ending position for the w. Ow. Not ow. That's too much. Ow. And if you're speaking more quickly and you're not fully enunciating o, u, or ow, then we tend to still have a little bit of that motion, but it won't come all the way around. O, 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 oo, oo, ooh, ow, ow, ow. So generally speaking, the lips are not particularly important. They do tend to be used for certain sounds where they're not required to make the sound, and it's perfectly fine. But with o, u, ow, and w, you do need some sort of lip motion, and the w is the one that kind of comes out, which you might be used to from your language, because I know many languages with the o and the u, they kind of just go o, u, o, right? The lips might kind of move in some way, but they kind of just stick out. That's pretty much what the w does. just the W, not the vowels, the W, and it's very tight. The O, ow, if you say go, but you say go, 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 even if your tongue is right, it's not going to sound right, because we need at least a little bit of this sort of dynamic motion, even if it doesn't come all the way around, for it to sound English. That's the most important part of O, and ow, is the lip motion. So you can even, in many cases, you can use more or less like your native language O. You might need a little bit of adjustment for it to sound completely natural, but if you use your normal language O and just add this little bit of lip motion, it'll immediately sound a lot better in most cases. So that's all there is really to say about the lips. The lips are not a very big thing. Of course, we do have p, b, m, which close the lips. And those use the lips in that way, but yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you've improved your accent. That's very good. It's also very nice when people appreciate you for your accent. It's fantastic. Always feels good, right? It's like, oh, wow, you sound so great. So exercise, speak from the back of the mouth. Okay, American English in general is spoken from the middle of the mouth. I'm going to be making lessons on mouth posture. It's spoken generally from the middle of the mouth, and it's a little down. It's a little set, which is why we need more space in the mouth. Now, it can sort of be back a little bit, and some American speakers will kind of be a little bit farther back, especially like if you have the cot merger. That might kind of get a little bit of bias towards the back of it, but it's still very centered. And so I wouldn't try to speak from the back of the mouth, because if you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to sound something a bit like this, right? You're going to get a little bit of this extra weird sound going on. And I'm still trying to use a lot of the American sounds, but it kind of sounds a little bit weird, right? Now, if I put a little bit more of an accent on it, and I get a little bit more of a Scottish sound, it's not perfect Scottish sound because I don't speak with a Scottish accent. It might be harder to understand me like that. I'm really trying to get back of the mouth, right? Almost into the throat. American English is not spoken that way. And in fact, a lot of these teachers telling you to go down and back, that is probably one of the worst pieces of advice that they can give you. And I see why they say that. They're not completely wrong, but what I'm discovering and what I'm exploring with mouth posture, not placement, kind of the same thing, but I think posture is a better term, and it's really focused on the tongue. What I'm discovering and exploring with that tells me that best case scenario, the way that a lot of other teachers teach you about placement is just not the terms used, and the way that it's taught is not the most efficient and the most accurate, the best way to teach it. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, it's just flat out wrong and misleading. So again, I'm going to be making some content on that soon in the near future, trying to finalize some things and get a little bit more of like some exercises for you. I'm actually in the process of developing some exercises for you to build up the proper posture. So that's going to be coming in the near future. Just stick around for that. And I'm glad you mentioned this. You say, I have discovered some placement exercises myself because couldn't find any video handy so far. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Hopefully, the content that I start making on that will be very useful for you. And I would like to see your feedback when I start coming out with those videos, and what your thoughts are on that. So we'll have to see in the near future what happens with that. So stay tuned. But I'm glad that you've made improvements and that you're trying to improve even more. That's fantastic. Very good job. Have you ever had to deal with bed bugs? There's been an infestation in some of the apartments of the building I live in, and we've had exterminators come over to do some prevention work. No bed bugs were found in my apartment, so please don't judge. Judge me. Yeah. Yeah, obviously, yeah, it's something that could, a lot of people might easily judge. But have I had to deal with them? Yes, I have. And the reason why is because I'm just so dirty. No, It's because when we moved into before we moved into this place, we moved to an apartment. My roommate and I, like quite a while ago. And when we first moved in, we had a pretty big living room. It was a 2-bedroom apartment with a pretty big living room. We had lots of extra space in there because we didn't have a lot of furniture. Like, we don't care about furniture very much. So my grandparents found a couch that was left over from one of their tenants or whatever that was renting a place. And so they're like, oh, well, couch. Give them the couch. Turned out the couch has bed bugs. Which nobody knew about until we started seeing them around the house. So it was unfortunate. It happened. That's how they got in. Thought we got rid of them. Turns out that wasn't quite thorough the first time around, and we had to pay for a second one, which really sucked. But we did get rid of them, and they're not fun. They're not. They're yeah. I do not like them. I do not like them at all. It's cockroaches and bed bugs. Bed bugs are right under cockroaches. For me, cockroaches are bleh. Anyway, yes, I have had to deal with them. I don't judge you. It happens, especially like if they weren't even in your apartment. Obviously, you didn't bring them in, so I don't know why I would judge you anyway. Maybe say, oh, maybe where you live is super cheap or something. Who cares? It happens, right? They're even here in the States, like they seem to be getting kind of resistant to some of the poisons. And people traveling a lot and stuff. You go to a hotel, next thing you know, you get bed bugs, and so it happens. I don't think there's any reason to judge anybody because of that. They're little pests that can easily not be noticed, and you bring them into your house. So it happens. But yeah, they're horrible. Okay, another A person. I don't read Russian. I don't understand Cyrillic. I don't know if it's Russian, Ukrainian. I think Ukrainian uses the same script. So unfortunately, I cannot understand you there, but I hope that's not anything offensive. Something tells me Josh has unseen guests in his room. Everybody's hungry for more English hacks, even native speakers. Yes, you probably hear background noises. There is somebody here, and that's okay. Don't mind. Balsamic. Okay, well, I said ball. Okay. Oh, I thought it was about going to be on the first part. So balsamic. Balsamic. Maybe people say it though. That's not weird. To me, I say balsamic. And in fact, that first syllable, instead of all, it can be reduced to a schwa, like not even like L color, just a schwa, balsamic. You could do that, but usually we'll say balsamic. Chimpanzee. Yeah, chimpanzee. Wait, chimpanzee. Okay, chimpanzee. That would be the normal way I would say it most of the time. Maybe moving the stress to chimpanzee, possibly. I've heard that, but I normally want to say chimpanzee. It's a chimpanzee. The other ones, no, not in the way I would speak. I heard an American 13-year-old pronouncing his weak T as a weak D in a word similar to royalty. Royalty. Hold on. Royalty. Okay, two things here. Let me double check something first. There's one pronunciation detail that the dictionary is good for. It's showing stress, usually. Royalty. Yeah, okay, that would explain it. Royalty. He's royalty. Okay. I think I have a way to explain this. It's a bit strange, but so the stress syllable is the first syllable, right? There's no secondary stress here. That's why I wanted to double check. Because for my ear, I mentioned this sometime before, like a long time ago when I first started the live streams. before I taught myself Spanish, like back in high school, I actually couldn't hear stress. Obviously, I can interpret it as a native, like, but consciously, if you say like, in this word, what are the stress words? I could not tell you. And it was through learning Spanish and how Spanish stress works that I actually started to be able to hear English stress better. But sometimes with secondary stress, it's a little difficult for me to be like, okay, is there secondary stress or is there not secondary stress? That's why I wanted to double check. Primary stress is not a problem for me anymore. In fact, it's like, how did I even have a problem in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's so obvious and easy to me now. But because, right, we know that if you have a T at the start of an unstressed syllable surrounded by two vowel sounds, it becomes a flap D. Okay. Now, this is definitely not a flap D. That's for sure. But remember, I say that the dark L is actually a half L vowel sound. It doesn't completely act like a vowel in all cases, but this is interesting evidence to me that it's telling me that that dark L really is a vowel. And some speakers are perhaps starting to try to adjust that naturally, subconsciously, into a D. Even though traditionally it may not be that way. So it could be something we're starting to see change. Royalty. I can imagine it being said with a weak D. It doesn't seem too strange to me. I don't, maybe I'm not aware that I might say it that way, but I would think of it as a T for sure. Royalty. He's royalty. Yeah, I really wanted to do the T. The D doesn't seem too bad. It's an interesting thing, a very interesting thing. My advice, just ignore it. You definitely don't have to do it that way. You could just do it with a T. So maybe it's a regional thing. Maybe it's something that's starting to change. I don't know. Especially since it's a 13-year-old. Maybe it's, something the younger generation is starting to shift a little bit. I don't know. But I would ignore it. As simple as that. I would just ignore it. Why do we get the feeling Josh will walk away wishing everyone a very happy Christmas from now on? I know, right? Well, it's actually annoying. Like if I'm watching a British thing and they say Happy Christmas, I'm like, oh, just doesn't feel good in my soul. I, for one, he'll proudly hold on to his Merry Christmas. Something wrong there. Okay, think. Okay, it makes more sense. That's what I thought of. The 5 for 1. Think heal. Okay, so I guess we need an apostrophe there. Another apostrophe is hell. Completely different word. I for one think he'll proudly hold on to his Merry Christmas. I think so. I mean, proudly, I don't know, but whatever. I want to go to the UK and wish people Merry Christmas. That's what I want to do. I think, he's American. Clearly, we couldn't tell from his sounds. You could tell from how he addresses people in the Christmas season. Yeah. I'll make a mental note and try to stick to it as well. Yeah, I know. See, that's the other thing, because like there's so much influence of British English on international English teaching, because it's like the tradition. It's like traditionally they would teach you British English. A lot of places do still teach you guys British English, which doesn't make any sense to me. But there's nothing wrong with British English. But of course, you're probably going to be taught Happy Christmas because it's the British way, and then you're talking to an American and you're like, oh, you don't say that. Why were we not taught that? Because you were taught British English. Okay, anyway, now it sounds like you smoked 2 packs of cigarettes and washed it down with vodka. I'm low-key here for it. Definitely not the vodka. Vodka's bleh. Yeah. I would definitely be drunk because I'm a lightweight. By the first vowel sound in air, I meant the R-colored eh sound, not the diphthong in May. Okay, interesting. I guess that makes sense. I don't know. Whatever. I already talked about that. I've always heard the eh sound in the word anger, differentiating it from the diphthong in rain. Anger. Rain. Ren, anger. No, that doesn't make any sense because there's still an N after that. I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. If you want to pronounce it that way, I guess it should be fine. I wouldn't pronounce it that way necessarily, but I don't know. It's that vowels that teachers teach you when they tell you how to pronounce A before M or N. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then because I'm thinking, well, at least in the way I speak, it's supposed to be anger. And if I use the same sound in rain, then rain ends in an N. And so you should be able to do the same thing with rain. And that just doesn't sound right. So I don't know. It's weird. Maybe it's because you're using the back end and it's just a weird case. I don't know. But Mr. MacBelly, welcome back. How am I doing? I'm pretty good. How are you? Would you please explain to me the horse split? I wouldn't know anything about that because to me they're exactly the same. There is no split. Horse and horse are pronounced exactly the same. So can't help you there. I'm in trouble. I would imagine. I think what that might be talking about. Yeah, that. I guess I'd have to look it up. What I imagine that would be is the difference between R and or. I could be wrong, but when you have the cot merger, and instead of having aw and ah, you just have ah, which again I can't do those two very well, but you just have ah, the one sound. In people who don't have the merger and they have that ah sound, when they do the R, right? So instead of saying horse, like I do with an R colored O, it's or horse. They actually there is no there's no R colored O for people who don't have the merger. If you don't have the merger, it's that backwards C, that aw sound that gets colored. And so they'll say horse, or forest, or something like that. I don't say it right. I've heard some people say like horse, forest, and stuff, which is like that's going into ah. That doesn't even make any sense. But regardless, that's probably what that is. For people with the cot merger, such as myself, there is no R colored aw because there is no aw. There's just or. Maybe that's not what that's talking about. I don't know. But that's what I would imagine it would be. And I don't think you have to care about it. But I don't really know anything about that. I'm in trouble with the American accent. In my mind, it's perfect, but when I'm trying to speak, it's very difficult. Okay, well, welcome, CB. In my mind, it's perfect, but when I'm trying to speak, it's very difficult. Yeah, that can happen. I know it's like, well, I sound great in my head. Yeah, it should sound like this, because maybe you have enough input, right? You know how it should sound, but then you can't get your tongue to do it, right? This is why you have to train your mouth, train your tongue. You have to do micro adjustments, build up tongue awareness, right? Move the tension around. I need to make more exercise and technique videos. I'm going to be doing that. But that's all part of the process. It also comes down to the difference between knowledge and skill, because you might know, especially if you studied the IPA, which I strongly recommend that you don't do. You might know, okay, this is supposed to sound like this is supposed to sound like that, that's supposed to sound like that. Maybe, you can even hear it pretty well, or at least think you can hear it pretty well. Might need to train your ears a little bit. I don't know. But maybe knowledge-wise and even potentially hearing-wise, you do have that skill, you have the knowledge, but you haven't trained your mouth, right? That's kind of like if I have a guitar and I play some notes and you can identify the notes. You say, okay, I know that's a C, that's a D, that's a G. But then I give you a guitar, you can't play the notes, right? It's two different skills. And knowledge is not skill. So there's the knowledge, the input skill, and the output skill. So like listening and speaking, but we're talking about the pronunciation part underneath that. So that's what it is. You just got to train your mouth. And how you do that is a big part of what my entire course is about, but I do need to make more videos specifically for the exact techniques. That's going to be coming. I do have some technique videos. Shadowing is a big one. But the micro adjustments are going to be your best friend for getting the exact sounds and everything. Also, the mouth posture that I'm going to be making lessons on soon. Do Americans speak with lazy tongue? I'm not quite sure what that means. I think I know what that means. My answer to that would be like do Americans speak lazily? In general, I think, especially if you compare it to like proper British English, American English is quite lazy. Yes. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that you can just do whatever. Blah, 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 no. But like we have sort of like the half th or the lazy th or whatever you want to call it. We have like the lazy we have the what was I calling that, the half p, the half k, like in asks, you don't actually fully close this, just kind of lazy, there's a half k sound, whatever. And these things happen, especially because American English is kind of in the middle of the mouth generally. We tend to, in fact, this is what I've been discovering about the mouth posture for American English. It's more or less centered, and tends to be lower a little bit. So your jaw needs to be open a little bit. It's not relaxed. Okay, relatively compared to your language, it might be kind of relaxed, but it's not relaxed like most teachers tell you. There's still a basic tension, and there's this like ball in the middle of your mouth, right? And you're always going to feel a little bit of tension here, no matter what you're doing. More on that later, but there is, think of it as, especially with the vowels, think of it as like the schwa sound is like the center of gravity. And then from there, it's like you have a yo-yo, right? It's like you go out to E and it comes back to right? And it may not necessarily go straight back or whatever as you're going from sound to sound to sound, but it generally kind of tends to go around that center of gravity with that ball in the middle. It's like you throw out the yo-yo, it goes out, it comes back, it goes over here to the K, and it comes back. And it's sort of kind of free-flowing and loose and kind of lazy in a way. Compared to something like British English, which might, I mean, it still flows, obviously, like speak, very easily, but British English, proper British English can sound a little more rigid, a little more tight. And the mouth posture for British English is actually a little forward and a little higher, closer to something like Spanish or Russian. So it makes sense, right? So the mouth posture has a lot to do with that perception of American English sounding kind of lazier in a way. But we do also get lazy with some of our sounds. Like we don't fully go into we'll just say yeah. But I'm sure that to some extent that much is probably true in a lot of languages, right? You don't always fully enunciate every single sound in your language, so whatever. You should be on TikTok. You'll get a plethora of students. Okay, so first, I'm not here to get students. I do. English Hacks does have a presence on TikTok. I do have a little TikTok channel. I haven't posted to it in a long time, and there are several reasons for that. I may go back and resurrect it at some point, because I do think that I should be on there, but for various reasons, I stopped for now. So you should be able to find me on TikTok. I don't know if I'll come up in search because I haven't posted anything in a long time, but I am on there. Yeah. Does it require to put more energy to have that resonance in the middle of the mouth? Well, I'll tell you this. One of the reasons why I tell you, why I say that that other American English teachers, when they say to relax, why I don't think that, although that might relatively technically be true, I don't think that's the best way to describe it or the best thing to tell you to do. Part of the reason why is because working with students, and even talking to some people I know that speak more than one language, like, okay, so like for example, I'm working with a Russian student right now, and in order, like his mouth posture for Russian, which is, a little more closed compared to English. I think it's a little higher. It's sort of slanted forward, so pushed forward a little bit. To him, that is relaxed, of course, because that's his language is mouth posture. It makes sense, right? And so when American English teachers tell you, oh, you need to relax, it's like, I'm already relaxed. What do you mean? What am I supposed to do with my tongue? Like, there's bleh. I'm not gonna talk like this all the time. Like, what does that even mean, right? And it can be useful for some people. I know, a lot of people like Rachel's English, and she talks about that a lot. And obviously, I've seen some results from some of her students, and they sound quite good. So clearly, there's something going on there. But I disagree primarily with the methodology. It might work for some people, but I don't think it's the best way to teach it. So instead of thinking of it as relax, this directly answers your question, because you're asking like, okay, do I need to put more energy or more effort into that, into getting that right middle of the mouth posture? It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unnatural. And it may even feel like you're having to force it a bit. Now, because it is a bit more open and it is probably relatively a bit more relaxed, at least certain parts of the tongue are a little more relaxed compared to your language. I've completely lost my thought there. Relaxing to some degree can help. But like my Russian student that I have, he says that in order for him to kind of settle down into that more middle, slightly more open posture, there is a bit of relaxing going on, but it's also like it feels tense, right? And then I also know someone who natively speaks two languages, Spanish and English. And they told me that because Spanish is the first language, and then English came a little later, but still very early. And this person tells me that the Spanish posture, which is, again, a little more tense, a little farther forward, like Russian, feels more relaxed. And the English posture, which, again, they're a native speaker, they sound perfectly fine, no accent whatsoever. To them, it feels a little more English. American English feels a little more tense and a little more rigid and a little less free-flowing compared to the Spanish posture. Okay, what does that mean? I thought American English was supposed to be more relaxed, right? So this relaxed idea, I think there is some truth to it, but it's also subjective. And it's just not the best term to use. It's really more about shifting the tension of how you hold your tongue. Okay. And some parts of your tongue will be more relaxed. One thing I've discovered with my Russian student is that in order to get this sort of slightly more forward posture, the back of the tongue needs to do a little more work to hold the tongue forward. And so he was trying to settle into and he was doing really, really good. But I kept noticing there was this little extra sort of bump here that instead of saying he was like which still sounds like a pretty great schwa. It's very schwa-like. It's acceptable. It's like 99%. But my ears are like, it's a little bit off, just a tiny bit off. And as soon as we identified, oh, he's holding this little extra tension from that other posture, and he's starting to kind of try to get, not like completely relax it, but sort of shift some of that tension into the middle and get this not quite as tense. It's still tense. There's still some tension, but not quite as tense. And just let it shift forward a little bit into this schwa, right? And settle down a little bit. So from that perspective, he's actually letting the tenseness shift forward, even though the posture is settling down compared to the Russian posture, like down and back. So if you just go completely down and back and you just try to relax, I was just going to talk like this all the time. That would be really relaxed, really down, really back. Obviously, that's not American English. So it is going to take you some effort to find that schwa, to adjust into that position. I'm building up techniques, like step-by-step techniques to help you find this position and build it up from that center of gravity that the schwa is in American English, and then to build from there. It's not going to be easy because you have to really build an awareness for the subtle tension in your tongue, which there will be exercises for that. And you'll start to feel, oh, okay, so you'll need feedback. You'll definitely need feedback from a native speaker. Not a teacher necessarily, just some native speaker that can tell you, preferably with good ears, and they can tell you like, okay, maybe there's a little extra something, like it's not quite, it's like, yeah, it's good, but maybe it's a little off, right? And you say, okay, well, if I try to maybe shift the tension here a little bit, or kind of maybe loosen this up a little bit here, or maybe tense this a little more here, whatever it is for the particular sound, you can actually maybe get into that sound better. But there's this sort of general posture that you want to find that it will probably be uncomfortable at first, and it won't feel relaxed to you. So I hope that kind of answers your question. I know that's a big roundabout way to answer it, but you will have to put some effort into it, yes, because your brain, your muscle memory wants to speak from your native language posture. If you need to consciously shift that posture and get used to holding that posture through your speech as you try to hit the English sounds. So, yeah. Speaking of horses, before I knew the lyrics to Jingle Bells, I always heard, "Oh, what fun it is to ride in one horse open sleigh." I know it's actually in a one horse open sleigh. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, lyrics can do that sometimes. Sound a little weird. That happens to us natives too. Like if the lyrics aren't clearly enunciated, or there's like music sort of clashing with the vocals and stuff. Sometimes, well, oh, I always thought it was this, but I finally looked up the lyrics and it's this, and I'm a native speaker, right? So that's normal. But I realized that the confusion stemmed from the fact that many I can't read. I was the fact many speakers, singers. I'm done. I'm just done for the day. Actually unround the or vowel as they're singing it, and it can go in the direction of harsh sometimes. Maybe, I don't know. Could be. Hamid, welcome. Do you teach on italki or somewhere that we can take lessons, please? I do. Not looking for students. I'm not here to get students. In fact, my main task here with this channel is to make a teacher as unnecessary as possible. You do need feedback, whether that's just from a regular native speaker who's not a teacher, a friend or something who's a native speaker. You will need some sort of feedback at some point, some details. But my job is to, as much as possible, erase the need for a teacher. I'm trying to give you as much as I possibly can in the best way that I know how to help you teach yourself and guide you through my lessons and through the live streams and stuff. And then from there, if you want to get a teacher to help or whatever, you can. But yeah, so I'm not looking for students, unfortunately. That does remind me, though, I have big news that I need to announce. And I also want some feedback from you guys because I'm not sure what to do with part of this. But first, I want to finish this up since I finally caught up. I think the concept of relax, interesting. So hard to hear, David, I know. So it's not relaxness, it's relaxed, ed, relaxedness. But because of that x and the n, you won't really hear that t, at least not very clearly. We don't say relaxedness, right? It's relaxedness. Relax, and it's like a held t into that n. Relaxedness. It's not relaxedness, relaxedness. Anyway, it's going to sound pretty much the same, especially in faster speech. But if you enunciate it a bit more, you're going to hear a bit of that t. Relaxedness. Anyway, doesn't matter. But that's not how this would be spelled. It would be spelled with an ed. At least it should be. Unless my brain is not working right now. Yeah. Should be like this. Relaxedness. Oh my God, I'm not typing. Relaxedness. Yes. And YouTube, the auto correct in the YouTube thing is telling me that is not wrong. So anyway, moving on. I think the concept of relaxedness is so misleading, especially coming from native speakers. Like, of course, your native tongue or your native language feels super relaxed. It's your mother tongue. Yeah, know what I mean. Exactly. Is that an actual hashtag? I don't keep up with all the trends. But yeah, know what I mean. Exactly. So yeah, and I think that's part of why people seem to like me, it seems, is that I try not to use a lot of the terms that other teachers use because I disagree with those terms. And then I explain a different way and they're like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. That's okay. Different things work for different people. If relaxing helps you get a better sound, it works for you. Great. I don't think it's the best way to try to teach the concept, even though it may be relatively true to some extent. Because as I said, some part of your tongue actually might be more relaxed, like the back probably, but that doesn't mean completely relaxed. Number one, that's the biggest point. But number two, also there might be other parts of your tongue that actually are a little more tense, depending, right? So definitely not the best concept, I don't think. Regardless, I have news. I know it's 2:00. We're out of time here, but I want to give you guys the news, the good news. Not that kind of good news. I know it's Christmas, but no religion here. I've come up with an idea, and I don't know how well it's going to sit with everybody because it could be perceived in a couple different ways. But I am thinking of holding a once weekly, it wouldn't be free, but a once weekly, so 4 times a month, webinar. Could be about different areas of English. I'm thinking, at least for now, just pronunciation. Okay. And it's not like a class, right? It's not where people come and I say, oh, this and this. No, it's not that kind of webinar. It would be a sort of a practice-based webinar. Now, because of that, I want to limit the number of people in each webinar. So I'm thinking 10 people, max 10 people, right? So let's say 1 week. So for the first week, there's 10 people in the webinar. Say it's a pronunciation webinar. And it will go for about, I haven't solidified this exactly, but it will go for about maybe 2.5 hours. And what it'll do is there will be a little bit of time in that 2 hours for maybe some wrap up at the end, maybe some preparation at the beginning. But most of the time, I'm going to give, if I remember my math right, it's about 10 minutes to each person that is there, where it would be a group call, right? Like on Zoom or something. I don't know. It'd be some sort of group call. So everybody's on the call, all 10 people, right? And let's say, first person, they're like, okay, I need help making this sound or with the stress or whatever it is, right? And so, I'm directly working with that individual for 10 minutes to help guide them to fix their problem. So you're getting actual live direct feedback from me like you would in a class, but it's limited to only 10 minutes per person. That's that's the unfortunate part. Okay. And we do that. We repeat that process with all 10 people. Now, the other people who were there watching, so let's say somebody's having trouble with eh, right? And I say, how do I make the eh sound? So as I'm guiding this person to do eh, right? And if you're watching, you're in the webinar and you're watching, and you say, well, I also have problems with eh. As I'm guiding this person, right? And you can hear me, you can hear the person. Your mic obviously would be muted, so we can't hear you. But you can then follow along with the guidance and see if you're also adjusting the same too. And then when it's your turn for me to talk to you, if you're still having some trouble, you're like, oh, I tried this, but it doesn't sound right. Or you just want me to check if now you sound better, right? So the other people who are watching are going to get the benefit of watching that one person get their direct feedback. But then also will have the opportunity to get their own direct feedback for whatever they need for pronunciation or whatever it is, right? I don't know what you guys think of that idea. I don't know if, especially since it's paid, I don't know if people would find that valuable enough because you only get 10 minutes of direct, feedback from me working with me, and then you watch the rest or watch other people get feedback from me. I do think there's value in that, but I don't know if it's valuable enough to charge. or if you guys would even enjoy that, right? Because here in the live stream, obviously you can see me, you can type, I can respond to you, you can hear me, but I can't see you. I can't hear your pronunciation, right? I can't give you feedback. I can't see your mouth, how you're moving your stuff. And so definitely value, but I don't know what you guys think about that. And I mean, you can think about it, let me know later, leave a comment, something, whatever. But it's an idea I have. Related to that, I'm thinking, so it would be, as I said, once a week. So it'd be 4 per month, which means that signups would be at the beginning of the month. So there's 40 spots throughout the month, 10 each week. And so you'd be able to like get your spot for the month. You might have to wait till the end of the month if these are all taken or whatever it is, but you get your spot. And then if there's no more spots, unfortunately, like I can't have like 50 people per webinar because I can't work with all of you, right? Maybe I do 5 people per webinar and give each person more time. I don't know. I don't know what would work out better for you guys, but a limited number of people once a week at a consistent time each week, because if I'm moving it around, it gets chaotic for me and chaotic for everybody else. So if you have to wake up at 3 a.m. to attend the webinar, I'm sorry, but that's how it is. And then you can only sign up for 1 spot per month. That's just fair, right? We want to give as many people an opportunity as possible each month. And the next month you can sign up again if you want. I'm thinking about, for like the Patreon and or YouTube member supporters, I'm thinking of providing some sort of discount depending on what the price of the webinar is, which I'm not sure what the price I want to charge is, because one number seems too high, another number seems kind of too low. But let's say you're a $10 Patreon supporter, you'd basically get $10 off. Possibly, that's an idea I have. So that way, you're not paying extra that month. You sort of, it's like, oh, thanks for being a supporter. Here's your discount because you're already giving me this much money for the month. Maybe also the Patreon and or YouTube membership supporters might get first pick, right? So it would be open to them first. And then if there's any extra spots, then it opens to the general public. Not sure about that. I'm thinking like, okay, would that be fair? Would that not be fair? I don't have an answer on that yet, but that's an idea. As for the exact price, this would probably be the biggest thing. I'm thinking, for me, which I'm always bad at pricing things, but I'm also aware that, some of you guys are in countries that maybe don't have very strong currencies, and you don't have, thousands of dollars to spend on a course or anything like that, or a webinar. So I'm personally thinking $50 is too much. Maybe that's just my perception. But I'm thinking $50 is too much. Like it just seems, especially since you'd only be getting, say if it's 10 people, you'd only be getting like 10 minutes of direct feedback from me, and you're paying, $50 to have one opportunity a month to get 10 minutes of direct feedback. And then you can watch other people maybe get feedback for similar problems you have. It doesn't seem like it's worth 50. I don't know if I can add more to the webinar to increase the value, but 50 also to me seems kind of high for some people, depending on what country you're from and stuff. So I don't know. It's like, I don't know if I want to put it that high. 30 kind of feels a little low to me, but I don't want to go below 30. So that would probably be the floor. So it'd be at least $30 for this webinar setup. So that's basically what I have for that idea. I don't know what you guys think about that. I am going to have to go. If anybody wants to leave some quick comments about that, throw out some ideas. Let me know if you think it's a good idea, bad idea, whatever. Go ahead and do that now. Otherwise, we can talk about it later. You can leave comments afterwards. That's fine as well. But yeah, I just think that would be a good way to interact more with you guys. And, since I'm not looking for new students, and I do have a limited number of Patreon spots at the $40 mark, where you do get to meet with me once a month for a 1 hour session. But those obviously, there's only like 4 or 5 spots for that. So for everybody else, to give everybody else an opportunity to get direct feedback from me, this is like the solution I have, where it's like, it's paid, right? Because I'm spending, I mean, I do the live streams for free. But this is, like extra time, it's paid, right? So I'm getting paid for it, but I'm also able to directly interact with you guys. So I don't know your thoughts on that. I'm not seeing any comments. So it sounds very cool in my opinion. There's a lot to be said for learning from each other's struggles on this English learning journey. Yeah. I do also, not this year, obviously this year's over, not 2022, but in 2023, I might try to create an English Hacks Academy. Not really sure what that would involve. There would be a big community component to that through the website that I'm going to be putting together soon. And I really, like David said, I like the idea of like communal learning, like learners helping each other and stuff like that as well. So I want to get like an actual like community on the website, and then if we have like an academy, there can be these sort of like webinar type things or whatever that, like, maybe you have like a monthly subscription to the academy and you get to attend the webinar or something. Again, there's a limited number of spots. That's the big bottleneck problem. Unless I want to do this 10 hours a day for a bunch of different groups of people, it's going to be very limited. That's the only real problem I see with it. But things like that, I kind of want to move in that direction over the next couple of years to make more of like an actual community that's interactive, that it can get more direct feedback from me without actual like classes, that like one-on-one classes, so that I can sort of continue to try to help like as many people as I can in the best way that I can, and like give you guys value while also being compensated for it at the same time. Like, so I don't know. Yeah, just ideas. Should we stay after our turn is over to listen to others, or can we leave and go? You could go. Yes, if you want to show up for your 10 minutes. Now, it's probably going to be maybe random or alphabetical or whatever for like whoever is the first person, the second person. I don't know how I would determine that, but so you might have to wait till the end for your turn. But if you're like the first person, second person, and you're like, okay, I got what I wanted, I'm going to leave, you could do that. Yeah, that's fine. Keep in mind, you would have paid for it. And so technically, you're maybe giving up a little of that value. And again, these are just ideas. I'm still trying to think of more that I can add to add more value to the webinar. This is just my initial sort of thought process. But yeah, you can leave whenever you want. I always found it strange that loyalty and royalty have a T instead of a weak D. I know, right? It should be more of a D sound. And yet for some reason it's not. Have a beautiful and very Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for all the great stuff you're doing for us. No problem. You too. This 13-year-old gave me hope they can be pronounced this week. I know, make things easier, right? Just follow the young generation. Okay, good. Yeah. So thank you guys very much. And then Dave and I will be waiting for your email if you haven't already emailed me yet. I don't know if you have done that. No, that's not a spam message. And we'll talk more about that. But I'll see you guys next week. Merry Christmas and all that. What is next week? Next Thursday? Yeah, it's the 30th. So right before New Year's. All right. Well, thank you very much, and see you guys later. Casualty also, yeah. It is what it is. Okay, bye.